Hey guys, it's Lauren. I'm back with another video today, and it's probably going to be kind of a long one because unfortunately I waited a little bit longer than I wanted to film another video, and 3 months have passed. So I am just going to be going through all the books that I read in the first quarter of the year in January, February, and March. And it's almost more than what I read in the entire year of 2019. Like, I can't remember how many books I read last year, but I think it was under 30. And in this first quarter of the year, I read 21 books. So I think that's pretty good. I'm definitely picking up with how much I'm reading again, and I've been listening to more audiobooks, which is helping with the amount of books that I'm reading as well. So I think it was a pretty good 3 months, and I enjoyed a lot of what I read. So I'm just gonna go in chronological order from the very first book I read of the whole year all the way to the end of March. And just to kind of give you a breakdown of how many books I read in each star category, I do rate in half stars. So I did put, like, if it was a 3.5, I put it in the 3-star category. So just so that you know that. Out of the 21 books, I read 1 2-star book, 6 3-star books, 11 4-star books, and 3 5-star books. So I only had 1 reread for the entire quarter, and one of those was a 5-star read. So I already knew I was gonna love it, but let's just get into it. The very first book I read in the new year was The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna, and I gave this book 4 stars. This is a book about a family who moves to Alaska, and the father has some PTSD from the war and likes the thought of starting over all the time. And he gets a letter in the mail from a buddy that he was friends with in the war saying that he has passed away and has given his land in Alaska over to the main character's father. And so they move up there and want to live off the land and completely start over and be off the grid. And it's a really hard book to read. There's abuse in it, so if that's a trigger for you, there's definitely quite a lot of abuse in the book, and it was really hard to read at times, but I think it was really good overall. That's why I gave it a 4 stars. There were some parts that were kind of unbelievable, and I think it was a little bit longer than what it needed to be. I don't want to give any spoilers, but there's an event that happens at the end, and I recognize that that event sets up the very ending of the book. You'll know what I'm talking about if you've read it before, but I just felt like that event was so different from the rest of the book, and even though it set up the ending really nicely, I just didn't like that part at all. So anyways, if you want to know what part I'm talking about specifically and you've read the book and you want to talk about it, leave me a comment down below, and I'll reach out to you so that we can have a conversation. But yeah, overall I liked it. I just didn't love it because I thought it was a little long and it had that one event in the middle kind of towards the end that I just didn't care for. The next book I read was one of my 5-star reads for the quarter, and that was The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. So in this book, our main character gets hired as a live-in nanny for this family, and they live in this giant house. It's like half old historical home, half new smart home, and there's cameras everywhere. Everything is kind of like controlled through an app on her phone, and the parents have to leave for a work conference like the day after she comes, so she really has no idea how to work a lot of the technology, and she hasn't gotten acclimated to the children. And so you already, like, from the very start, just have this feeling of unease, like, you know something is gonna go wrong. And we already know at the beginning of the book as well that the babysitter, the live-in nanny, has been accused of murdering one of the children, and she's in jail. So she's actually, it's written like she's writing a letter from jail to an attorney that she wants to have represent her in court. So you already know, like, the big event that happens at the end of the book, but you just don't know how it happens. And so it gets real creepy. There's a lot of, like, really creepy stuff that starts to happen in the house, and parts of this I did predict, parts of it I did not. And if you want to get into a conversation about that too, just let me know, and we can talk about it. But I did not guess who killed the kid. And I was really upset by the ending too, if you know what I'm talking about. So anyways, this was an amazing book, 5 stars. It had me on the edge of my seat, and the worst part was I had borrowed it from the library and it returned itself when I was only like halfway through, and so I had to wait like a couple weeks for it to renew. I think I actually started this before 2020 started. I think I started it in 2019. But yeah, I had to wait like a couple weeks to have it be my turn at the library again, and it was terrible. So anyways, yeah, but I could tell that I loved it because I was really, really wanting to have it. I almost considered buying it, and I don't spend money on books typically. So that was saying something for me. The next book I read was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. I had read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by this author last year and loved it. It was one of my favorite books of the whole year, and I had heard a lot of really great things about Daisy Jones and the Six as well. And so I decided to read this one. I wish I had listened to this on audio because I keep hearing now how great it is, that it has a full cast and music, and that it's really good. So I might have to go back and listen to it on audio sometime, but I really enjoyed it as a physical reading experience as well. I thought it was slow, but in a good way. Like, there's not this huge plot in the book. It follows a band, and it's like interview style, and it just follows how they became a band and how they broke up and what band life was like. There's a lot of drugs in here and kind of heavier topics. So it is kind of dark in some parts, and you get to see the good and the bad of being in a band, basically. The main musician in the band, I loved his relationship with his wife. That was like one of my favorite parts of the whole book. And overall, I just thought it was really good. It was a little bit slow at times, and I did sort of wish there was a little bit more of a plot. So that's why I docked a 0.5 star, but really it was really good. The next book I read was The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, and I gave this book 4 stars. This is a thriller revolving around a patient who is accused of murdering her husband, and she hasn't spoken since the event happened, and so she's actually in a psych ward, like a lockdown unit. This new psychologist comes, and you're following his point of view too, and he comes in and he wants to be the one that helps her to speak again. And so yeah, it's the story, their story basically, and it kind of unfolds what happened. But it wasn't my favorite book ever by far. I even wonder if I would maybe give it 3.5 stars instead of 4, but I was enjoying it while I was reading it. I read it really fast and it was keeping me entertained. But overall, as a thriller, I didn't think that it was anything amazing. I was surprised at the end by the plot twist, but I didn't like the plot twist that much. So I don't know, this one's a hard one for me. I almost kind of feel like I could have given it 3.5 stars rather than 4, but like I said, I was really interested in it while I was reading. Just overall, the story itself was not the greatest in my opinion. There are other thrillers that I've enjoyed a lot more than this one. The next book I read was The Unnie Mooners by Christina Lauren, and I was totally in the mood for something light after a couple thrillers and you know, more serious books, and so I decided to pick this one up. I've never read anything by Christina Lauren before, and I was a little bit disappointed, to be honest. I gave this book 3 stars. This follows a couple who, the main girl, her sister was getting married, and she is like the luckiest person alive and won this big vacation to Hawaii, and it needs to be redeemed or she'll lose it. But the bride and groom and the whole wedding, like all of the guests, get sick except for our main character and the groom's brother, which is the best man. And they have, the main character and the best man have like this feud from previously, but they decide that they're gonna take the vacation together so that it doesn't go to waste. And at the start, of course, they think they're not gonna spend any time together, and they end up falling in love, as I'm sure that you can guess. But I didn't love the characters. I know a lot of people think that this book is super funny and they loved the characters, but I was really kind of annoyed by the main character. I can't remember her name now, but she was just kind of bitchy, honestly. And I know that it's the whole like hate to love trope, and that's how it's supposed to be at the beginning, but she was really annoying to me, honestly. And there were some funny parts. I did laugh at quite a few of the lines of banter between the two characters, and I was rooting for them to get together, but overall just not my favorite romance because I just really wasn't invested in the characters very much. The next book I read was Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, and this is the second book in the Six of Crows duology. I gave this one 4.5 stars, which is what I gave Six of Crows as well. Overall, I loved this duology. I thought it was really, really well done. I loved all the characters. Just really, really good. I don't really remember why I didn't give it a full 5 stars, but it just didn't seem like a 5-star read to me. There was something missing. I'm not really sure what it was, but I loved this. I really wish that she would write more books with these characters because it's so good. So good. And if you don't know what this one's about, which I'm sure you do because it is all over BookTube and everybody's read this series. I don't know why it took me so long, but it's basically a heist story where a group of characters has to break in and steal something from this super fortified location. And that all happens in the first book, but I'm not going to tell you what happens in the second book because of spoilers, but I thought it was really good. I guess that's all I have to say about it. The next book I read was Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, and this is a trilogy YA mystery series, and I don't even really know why I picked this up. I don't typically like YA mysteries very much, but this was really good. Spoiler alert, I read the whole series in these last few months, and I gave all of the books 4 stars. It is just, in my opinion, a very solid 4-star series. It follows our main character Stevie, who goes to this school called Ellingham Academy, and it's a school for gifted students. They all have like something really special about them. A lot of it is like artistic. So for Stevie, she knows a lot about the Ellingham murders that happened way back when. So yeah, there's like this whole kind of mystery surrounding what happened to the founder's wife and daughter. They were kidnapped, the wife was found dead, but the daughter has been missing for like 80 some years. And so Stevie is like an expert in the case, and she wants to come to Ellingham Academy to try to like solve the murders, and that's how she gets in. But murders start happening at the school in present day as well, and Stevie's trying to solve both of them, and it's really good. The one thing that was a little hard was that it was so long to find out the answers to everything because it's a 3-book series. Literally, the mystery spans across the entire 3 books, and you don't know what happened. Like, you don't know who's responsible for the murders until the last book. So you're doing like a lot of reading and slowly uncovering the case. And obviously like more things happen in the subsequent books leading up to what you find out at the end. But yeah, it kind of bothered me that I had to like wait so long to figure anything out. So that's my only gripe with it, I guess. I wish there would have been a little bit of relief in terms of like feeling like you knew what was going on a little bit sooner. The next book I read was An Anonymous Girl by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen, and I gave this book 3.5 stars. This book revolves around a makeup artist who kind of lies to get her way into this study that's being conducted at a university, and it's regarding morality. And so she has to answer some questions. She is like broke and needs the money, and it pays really well, and it ends up turning into a lot more than just a computer test. But that's all I want to say. This one was kind of disappointing to me. I really, really loved their other book, The Waif Between Us, and I've heard from so many people that if you love one, you probably won't like the other one as much, and that was definitely the case for me. I gave The Waif Between Us 5 stars, and this one, like I said, only gave 3.5 stars. I don't really know what it was about this book that I didn't love, but I just didn't think it was as smart as the last one. I didn't really love our main character. It was a little boring at times for me, honestly. So I did like the reveal at the end, and I thought the overall idea was really good. I just didn't love the execution that much. So it's not that I wouldn't recommend this book. I think that there's definitely an audience for this and that some people would really, really like it, but this is just not my favorite style of thriller. So like I said, gave it 3.5 stars. It was good. I will definitely read whatever they put out next. I think there's a new one coming out. I think it just came out. So I'm excited to read that one too by these authors. But yeah, just wasn't my favorite thriller of all time. The next book I read was The Dreamers by Karen Thompson, and I loved this book so much. You guys, I gave this book 5 stars. This was my favorite book of the quarter. I loved it so much. It was so good. And it's kind of weird now that we're going through all this COVID stuff. Like, I'm glad that I read it before that, because I don't think that it's a book you'd want to read right now. Essentially, it's the story of how this one town contracts this virus where people just fall asleep, and it's super contagious, and it ends up that just all these people are sleeping. I don't know. It's a really strange and unique book. I don't think it's a book for everybody, but to me it was so beautiful and so gripping, and the writing was wonderful, and I just loved everything about it. I don't really even know how to describe why I loved it so much. It's either gonna be your thing or it's not, I think. And so for me, it definitely was my thing. I loved it. I definitely will be reading this one again too, because I was just so immersed in this story while I was reading it. I did not want it to end. The next book I read was The Bride Test by Helen Huang, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. This was the first book I read on our cruise that we went on. Actually, I finished The Dreamers on our cruise too, but I started that one before we left. We went on a 18-day vacation to the Panama Canal on a cruise, and so I did a lot of reading while we were gone for that too, and I was definitely in the mood for something like light and lighthearted and a good romance, especially since the Unnie Mooners was kind of disappointing for me. I really wanted to find a good romance that I loved, and this totally did it for me. I'm actually reading The Kiss Quotient, which is her first book in the series right now, and I didn't even realize that they were connected, but it's kind of fun because now I'm seeing these characters from The Bride Test in The Kiss Quotient, and I don't know, it's really cool. So anyways, the main male character in this book, his mom really wants him to get married, and so she goes to Vietnam to like recruit a bride for him basically, and so she's paying her to come live in the United States and try to get her son to fall in love with her. And the main male character has Asperger's, and so it's really an interesting and beautiful story about love with Asperger's. It's so interesting to me. I knew some things about Asperger's, but not a lot, and it was really, really eye-opening for what life is like for people who have Asperger's, and what it's like to love someone and trust someone when you don't like to be touched and when you don't always know how to communicate. It was just really, really good, and I loved both characters. I loved the female character and the male character equally in this book, and I was like rooting for them hardcore the entire time. It was so good. I highly, highly recommend these books. If you haven't read them, they're so, so good. The next book, I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit, but I read 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James, and I have never read this series before, so this was like a total whim downloading this one for the cruise. Like I wanted to fill my e-reader with books from the library before I went on the cruise, and I like couldn't decide what else I wanted, and so I thought, you know what, maybe I'll want to read some smut for fun. So I downloaded the trilogy, and I ended up reading the first 2 books. So I actually read 50 Shades of Grey and 50 Shades Darker, and I gave 50 Shades of Grey, the first book, 3 stars, and 50 Shades Darker, which is the second book, I gave 2 stars. I just did not like that one as well. These are just stupid, but enjoyable. It's like the guilty pleasure thing. I don't know. It was kind of like I was laughing the whole time, but also kind of enjoying it. It's weird. I don't even really know how to talk about this on camera, but if you don't know what this one is, it's a romance involving a male character with a preference for being a domineer, basically. So there's, yeah, some kinky stuff, and it gets intense. I just think the characters are kind of annoying in this series, but for some reason I'm gonna finish it. I don't know why. I'm gonna read the 3rd book too, I guarantee, but I'm not in the mood for that right now, so I don't know. I don't even know what to say about this. It's just kind of weird that I read it, and moving on. So the next book I read was The Queen of Nothing, and this is the third and final book in the Folk of the Air trilogy by Holly Black. I gave this book 4 stars. And I think I might have given this entire series 4 stars. I think I liked the second book best. I may have given that one 4.5 stars, but overall, I really liked this trilogy. It's set in the Fae world, and there's a lot of political intrigue and romance, a good romance. There's a lot of really good stuff in this. I liked the world a lot. I liked these characters a lot. I have heard that a lot of people were really disappointed in this last book and how it ended, and I can see why. I feel like it could have been a lot more epic than what it was, but I still enjoyed it, so I gave it 4 stars. Obviously, I can't tell you very much about what happens in the final book, but I was happy with where it ended. I would love to see another series, like a spin-off series in this world, because I think the world is really good, and I would love to see more from these characters, but yeah, overall, just like a solid fantasy series, and it may be one that I reread someday too, because I would like to go back knowing how it ends. I'd like to go back and kind of read the whole thing again, because I think I would just, now that I know these characters so well, I think I would pick up new things, and I think it would be really enjoyable. I'm so sorry that I'm getting froggy in my throat too. With this whole quarantine thing, my husband's the worship leader at our church, and we just recorded music for the live stream. We're doing a recorded service this week because we just found out that someone from church that's been at church recently has COVID and was just diagnosed, so we're staying out of the building tomorrow, and we just recorded, and so I sang a lot, and now my voice is kind of hoarse, so that's why I'm sounding kind of bad. Okay, so the next book I read was The Vanishing Stair by Maureen Johnson. That was the second book in the Truly Devious series, so I already talked about that one. I gave it 4 stars. And then the next book I read was We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I actually listened to this book on audio, and it's the first book that I've listened to on audio in a very, very long time, so it was kind of interesting, but I thought the audiobook was really, really well done. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm working in my dad's greenhouses right now, and I plant flowers all day long, and it's super repetitive and mindless work, and so it's been really, really nice to have audiobooks to keep me occupied so I can kind of multitask while I'm working. But this is a thriller mystery kind of too, but a tame one. It's more of a psychological one. It's about this really wealthy family where the grandparents own an island, and the whole family, like the aunts, uncles, cousins, they go to this island every summer for the summer. And the main character, 2 summers prior to when the book is taking place, she was found on the beach, almost dead, I guess, knocked out, and nobody really will tell her what happened or how she got injured, and she has all these headaches and she has memory loss because of this incident, and she just wants to figure out what happened that summer at the island. She took a summer off from being there and went abroad with her dad, and then now this is the second summer since it happened, and she's back at the island and trying to uncover what happened to her. And it was really unexpected for me. I did not know where this was going, and I liked where it went. I don't know if I said this, but I gave it 3.5 stars. It wasn't my favorite mystery thriller ever, but I did think it was really well done, and I liked the writing a lot too. I liked the atmosphere. I am reading a lot of books lately where there are very wealthy characters. I don't know, I'm getting kind of sick of it, but at this point, I wasn't quite there yet. So I did like that aspect of it. But yeah, the reveal at the end I was not expecting. I thought it was pretty good. So I would recommend this one. The next book I read was Paper Princess by Erin Watt, and this is the first book in the Royals series. I gave this book 4 stars. I really, really liked it. I am really upset right now because with all the libraries being closed, I can't get my hands on the next books in this series, and I would really like to continue it right now, but it's not available online through my library, so I'm just gonna have to wait until I can get the physical copy after all of this stuff is over. But this follows our main character who one day when she's at school, she gets called to the principal's office, and there's this guy here to get her basically and tell her that he has parental rights to her. Her mom died recently, but she's kind of like living on the run, I guess. She's living by herself and the school doesn't know that she's an orphan. She's stripping for money, which is kind of an interesting part of her character, I thought. But anyways, the super rich guy comes and says, like, I'm taking you to my home and you're gonna be my new daughter. And he has 4 boys and their mom died like a few years back too. So there's kind of that parent death dynamic with both sets of characters. But the main character and one of the sons from the family start to have a thing, and I really like the romance. I think it's really good. I was entertained by this book a lot, and yeah, I'm excited to see where this series goes. I like the characters and I like the setting. Again, it's like that wealth gap thing, which I'm sort of getting sick of, but I don't know. In this one, I think it's done pretty well, I guess. So I'm enjoying it. The next book I read was Beartown by Frederick Bachman, and I gave this book 3.5 stars. I listened to this one on audio when I was in the greenhouses. I thought that this audiobook was done pretty well as well, but I will say that I thought this story was very slow. This follows this small town called Beartown, and it's a hockey town. And the junior league team, I think it is, it's the best team that they've seen in years, and they want to win the championship so that Beartown can kind of like get back on the map again. It's kind of fallen into poverty in the last like few years because the hockey team hasn't been very good, and they basically want the town to like grow and tourism to come in through their hockey team, I guess. So anyways, there's a big event that happens, and I think it says it in the synopsis, but in case it doesn't, I don't want to spoil it. There's a big event that happens that kind of sets off the rest of the story, but it doesn't happen until like 40% through. And so this is a long book, and it's just really boring at the beginning. Like, there's a lot of character setup and story setup, but I just wasn't enjoying it. I don't know. I think the event that happens and the rest of the story that happens after that, it's an important story and it was done really well, but I could have gone without that whole first little bit there at the beginning. I think they could have set the story up or made the event happen a lot sooner, and it would have been much more enjoyable. The next book I read was Hunting Prince Dracula by Carrie Maniscalco, and this is the second book in the Jack the Ripper series. And I gave this book 4 stars. I love this series. I think I gave the first one 4 stars as well. I listened to this on audio, and the audiobooks are really, really good. So if you're looking for an audiobook recommendation, here's one for you. This follows our main character, Audrey Rose, and this is set in historic London, I think. This book takes place in a different location, but the character is from London, I believe. And I think it's set in like the 1800s, and she has been apprenticing with her uncle to do forensic studies. Like, she does autopsies and cuts open bodies and is all into science, and pretty much she's a badass woman for that time period. And anyways, in the second book, Audrey Rose and Thomas, which is the love interest character, and they're both into the forensics thing, they get to go to this university. It's set in the castle where Vlad the Impaler lived, and it's a whole vampire Dracula mystery, basically. There's murders happening, and they're being made to look like vampire murders. So yeah, it's really good. I don't really know how to explain this one that well, but it's a good mystery. It's well done. There's lots of action. Just not like amazing, so it wasn't a 5-star for me, but overall I thought it was really good, and it was definitely entertaining. I love these characters. I love Audrey Rose and Thomas. They're both wonderful. So I definitely recommend this series if you have not read it before. The next book I read was Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder, and this is the first book in the study series. This was my reread for the quarter. I've read this book before, and I gave it 5 stars both times. Love this book. I love this series. I've actually never finished the series, which is why I'm reading it over again, because I'm like, how have I not finished this? I never finished Fire Study, which is the last book in the trilogy. So I'm going to reread the whole shebang, and I'm so excited about it. I love these books. It follows our main character, Yelena, and she at the beginning of book 1, she is in jail and it's her execution day. She's going to be hanged, and she gets brought upstairs and told that she can either go on to her execution or become the commander's food taster. Her life gets spared and she learns how to test the food and taste for poisons. Valak is like the commander's bodyguard, basically. It's like his right-hand man, and he's the one that teaches Yelena all of this, and they have a romance that starts, of course, and it's really good. There is a magical aspect to this book. Yelena has magical powers, but not everyone does in this world. It's like a forbidden thing now too, so she has to keep it a secret, and she really doesn't know that she has power until the events that happen in this book. So it's like she's discovering her power and trying to keep it a secret at the same time. And it's just really good. If you haven't read this one, it's an oldie but a goodie. So I'm excited to keep reading this one. I'm about to start the second one right now. The next book I read was The Hand on the Wall by Maureen Johnson, and again, I already talked about that one, gave it 4 stars. And then the last book on this list, the last book I read this quarter, was The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert, and I gave this one 3 stars. I listened to this on audio as well, and honestly, I think that really affected my enjoyment of this book. It's narrated by Rebecca Soler, and she also narrated Sadie. So if you've listened to that audiobook, which I know a lot of people have, it's very reminiscent of that. And I don't know, I think her voice fits angry characters really well. And that's what the main character in the Hazelwood, that's what her persona is too. She's kind of an angry, bitter girl. And I just thought it was done better. Her voice was better in Sadie. She kind of bugs me in this book. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but if you've listened to Rebecca Soler before, you probably kind of know what I'm talking about with what her tone is like and everything, and I just didn't like it in this book. So this book, I guess, is part of a series. I didn't know that when I started it, but I'm not sure if I'll be continuing on. I think the second book is out, but it follows our main character, who is the granddaughter of this author who is known for writing these kind of like dark fairy tales, and they're kind of like obscure. Like there's this group of kind of like cult, you know, they love the book and it's really hard to find. And so the main character, she's actually never even read the stories before, but she knows that her grandmother is famous for this book that she wrote, and her grandmother lives in this place called the Hazelwood, and all of the fairy tales take place in this kind of like separate world. I can't remember what it's called now. I wish I did, but it's in this separate world, and the main character's mother gets abducted by characters from this world. So it's like this other world that's infiltrating the real world. And so our main character goes on this kind of quest to find the Hazelwood so that she can gain access to this other world, or find her mom basically. And she hooks up with another boy from her school who is one of those cult followers of the fairy tales, so that he can help her on this journey to find them. And it's just kind of weird. Like, I don't think I did a very good job of explaining that, but it's just a very strange world and a very strange concept, but I kind of liked it. I just think maybe it could have been done a little bit better. I like the fairy tale aspect. Like, they tell a couple of the fairy tale stories in the book, and I really like them. They're like really dark and weird, and it's really good, but I just didn't like the main character. There's kind of like a big plot twist involving her that happens later in the book, and then a lot of things make sense after that, but I just didn't really love her, and I don't know. I don't know if I'll be continuing. It was good, but just like not the best thing ever. I think it just could have been executed a lot better. I like the idea of the story. I just didn't love like the overall result of the story. So anyways, that's all the books that I read in January, February, and March of 2020. I'm pretty happy with what I read. There were some things that weren't so great, but there were some really, really good books in there. My favorite one being The Dreamers by Karen Thompson. So I highly recommend that one. I don't think I would read it right now, like I said, just because of all the COVID stuff that's happening, and the fact that that story takes place around a virus spreading basically, but it was so good, and just a lot of really good stuff in these past few months. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you've read any of these books, I would love to hear what you thought about them in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching. Bye!